So far we've picked sweet cherries, sour cherries, mulberries, service berries, apricots, plums, crab apples, pears, quince, black walnuts, sumac, ginkgo nuts, and peaches. I'm sure there's more out there that we just haven't been able to pick yet. Oh, and elderberries. We don't expect that there's 1.5 million pounds of fruit growing every year in Toronto. We see cities as dirty places, as toxic places, as places of concrete and not as ecosystems. Most commonly asked question was, but is it safe to eat? And so people were really hesitant about trusting in what's being grown from our soil and in our air. When Not Far From the Tree came around, people knew why it was important, and people understand that hunger is a problem in Toronto, but also the groundswell of support behind the local food movement. So all of these things came together and really helped to initiate Not Far From the Tree. Not Far From the Tree is Toronto's very own fruit picking project. Homeowners sign up their trees with us, and we organize teams of volunteers to do the picking, and then everything is shared. So the owners offered a third to keep, and the volunteers all share a third, so everybody who helps out gets to take some home. And then a third is donated to food banks and shelters and other organizations that can really put the fruit to good use. First year, we were able to do just one neighborhood, but from there we picked over 3,000 pounds of fruit. And we knew that the idea could easily be expanded to other neighborhoods as long as we had the right support. So the following year we did 3 neighborhoods and over 8,000 pounds. And this year we were in 5 neighborhoods, and in that area we picked almost 20,000 pounds of fruit. That's actually only from a quarter of the trees that are currently registered with us.
Once we harvest all of the fruit, we weigh the fruit. We record all the fruit that we pick because we like to know just how good of a job we're doing. We weigh the fruit and then we divide it into thirds.
We were really committed to doing it by bicycle. So we wanted it to be sustainable transportation. We wanted to be able to contribute to carving out networks for sustainable transportation in the city. So we're transporting all of our equipment and the fruit that we donate, all of it by bicycle.
But she comes through here and just follow me. And in here, we have the whole setup. Not Far From the Tree can store their bike trailer here and any other equipment that she needs. Here are the inner workings where all the good stuff happens. And she loads any apples or anything that goes in there. And then we deal with it on our end after she delivers it. So we do processing or whatever that we need to do. We hand it over to the food bank. Right now we're prepping for Thursday's food bank. So we still have, from last year, we still have lots of preserves. Courtesy of Not Far From the Tree, we have ginger pear conserve. It's fantastic over vanilla ice cream. What else do we have? We have absolutely gorgeous crab apples in sweet syrup. So we served these last year at our Thanksgiving meal.
We are the home for the East York hub of Not Far From the Tree, and this is our 3rd season. We're an associate member of Daily Bread, and we have a food bank that serves the geographic area here, Woodbine to O'Connor, Maine to Donlands. So those are the folks that we see week by week who don't have enough food themselves, and so come to us to supplement the food they have for their households. We have trees in this neighborhood that we could reclaim the food from, and it wouldn't go to waste. And we can do this. Let's become another hub for Not Far From the Tree. We couldn't always use all the fruit that came, and they then, in this very room, had preserving parties. I can't tell you the number of folks who loved the pears, and they got to asking, are there fresh pears this week? So that just tells you how much that mattered to them as well. There's nothing like local food. It's so delicious. You can't beat it.
People are building up their knowledge about trees growing in our city. There's this concept of an urban forest that is being spread.
When you start to put on your fruit goggles and look at the world, you start to notice that there are actually literally thousands of fruit trees growing right here in our city. And what makes it even more exciting is that they tell a cultural history and a natural history of our landscape. Now this is just an example of an apple that we picked just a few days ago, a few blocks away from here. We are so used to going into a supermarket and seeing a lovely, beautiful, ripe, polished apple ready for us to judge and pick and take. And if we see an apple that's a little bit smaller, or maybe an apple that has some spots on it, or is a little bit lumpy, we suddenly don't know what to do, and we're pretty sure it's inedible. We know that when we go to the supermarket and we buy fruit, they're probably polished with wax, and we know that they've been sprayed with things that in high dosages are carcinogens. And yet when it comes to growing fruit in the city, we think, oh my goodness, it must be dirty. We talk a lot about the 100-mile diet. Well, you know, there's a 1-mile diet living right here in our urban orchard.
I'm McLeod. I'm Ben. And from here, they're picking fresh apples from Toronto and making it into apple cider for free. I think it's cool.
It's learning not in a way that we're giving a speech about the importance of trees in the city and of eating local food and of promoting the environment and feeding the hungry, not in such a didactic way, but just by the experience of it, that they're going away with all of those things and more.
My name is Paul McClure, and I'm coming through Nuit Blanche. I live in the neighborhood, and here at the Gladstone was not far from the tree, which I'd heard about before, but it was really interesting to see this whole setup, that taking apples from the neighborhood and peeling them and pressing them and making apple cider. And I'm a homeowner, and we have a pear tree, so we've just signed up to have our pear tree used next year for the harvest, so that the pears can go to the community and they can be used. Right now we don't use them, so it's great. It's a great organization.
We knew that preserving the fruit was filling a gap that was sort of like completing the circle of the fruit being already grown, existing in our city. We're going out to pick it, but then we were donating this such a surplus of fruit to these agencies, and so many of the agencies say, okay, great, more, but at some points they would also get overwhelmed with the amount of fruit, and for our volunteers as well. So we needed to figure out a way that we could store some of that fruit away for winter, and also to fill a gap for our own skill sets, that so many of us have parents or grandparents who are really familiar with preserving, but that in the current generation, it's a skill, it's a knowledge that is fading.
This is sumac aid, which is like a sumac lemonade. Yeah, filled with vitamin C. So we're going to put our, there it is, isn't that beautiful?
There are pies, there are chutneys, there are jellies and jams. There are eating them fresh and sharing them with friends, and I don't know. I mean, there's just so many possibilities, and from the stories of where our fruit has gone to, we've pretty much heard every possibility that could be done with fruit. We've been able to help other groups get started in Edmonton, in Calgary, in Niagara, in Kitchener-Waterloo. Just the other day I was on the phone with somebody in Peterborough and in Montreal, but also outside of Canada, in Atlanta, Georgia, in Oregon, and last week somebody approached me from Auckland, New Zealand to get something started there. So there's a lot of interest to do similar projects elsewhere, and we are so happy to help out in any way that we can, sharing the resources that we have. In the longer term, we hope to be able to one day meet the needs of every neighborhood in the city with our program. But we also hope that at some point there will no longer be a need for Not Far From the Tree. So we hope to be able to implement a plan where the fruit tree owners that we're working with are able to find solutions for their trees to be picked on their own. So working with their neighbors, connecting volunteers more directly with them, making it known which agencies across the city can accept fresh fruit donations. All of these pieces we hope to complete the puzzle without the need for an organization to do so. Again, that's an ambitious goal because there's so many different reasons why fruit tree owners can't always harvest from their trees, but we want to be able to figure out some solutions that are going to happen at an even more neighborhood level. So neighbor to neighbor, being able to make sure that the abundance of fruit being picked in the city is being put to good use. We see our cities as being really dirty, toxic places, as being polluted places, and yet it's where most of us live. So I think that by seeing what is already growing in our cities, by making fruit trees and the larger urban orchard, as we call it, by making that visible, by drawing attention to it, and by revaluing these trees in our city, then it's shifting people's perception. And that's probably the most powerful piece of Not Far From the Tree, that we see our city differently. So yes, we've engaged many, many volunteers, many homeowners. We've been able to deliver a lot of fruit to food agencies, but we've reached so many other people because once they even just hear about what Not Far From the Tree does, they start to see the city just even a little bit differently. And that, I think, is sort of the most powerful ripple effect we have.